colleagues. Permit me to welcome you to this 2024 Business Integrity Week panel discussion day. The theme of this year is Seplat Zero Tolerance to Fraud, a catalyst for Seplat New Culture Rebrand. We have seasoned senior colleagues, directors that will do justice to the topic this morning. But before we go there, permit me to say there is no planned drill this morning, and if you hear any alarm, know that it is real. Secondly, there's no planned drill. If there's any alarm, please take it very, very serious. When you go out, by your left, you see the exit that leads to the staircase. Don't use the lift in case of any alarm, and go down gradually to the muster point until you get further instruction. In case you also want to make use of the convenience, you go out, you take your left, and you get the convenience both sides. By your right is female, while by your left is male. We also enjoy everyone to ensure that their phone is silent or in aeroplane mode to avoid distraction. So, at this juncture, let us project the same.
Accidents happen at work every year as a result of slips, trips, and falls. These accidents lead to employees taking more than 350,000 days off work. People typically strain, sprain, and fracture their arms or legs. More serious injuries are caused by blows to the head, which can be fatal. Let's go through a few examples. 1. An employee slipped as he entered the building and fell headfirst down a flight of stairs, hitting the concrete floor 1.3 meters below. He died as a result of his injuries. 2. An employee slipped in a dark car park outside his workplace and strained his back. 3. Employees had to walk around stuff that had been left blocking a passageway in an industrial facility. One of the employees slipped, sprained his knee, and hit the back of his head on the floor. 4. An employee tripped over a high door sill and dislocated her shoulder as a result of the fall. 5. An employee fell and broke his wrist after tripping over cables that had been left on the ground at a construction site. Now let's run through some ways of avoiding similar accidents. Plan your workspaces and access routes so they can easily be kept neat and tidy. Risk assessments help you to identify dangerous places and implement the necessary safety measures. Make sure that indoor and outdoor areas are properly and sufficiently lit. Ensure there is good lighting in stairways, corridors, and entrances in particular. Sturdy handrails, good visibility, and slip-resistant floor surfaces also improve safety on staircases. Remember to carry out regular cleaning and maintenance. Make sure people can work at an appropriate pace. Accidents are more likely when you are in a hurry. Smooth work processes help to keep everything in order. Make sure you have enough time to get from place to place. Wear suitable shoes for the weather and your work. Keep your eyes open and focus on one thing at a time. Put things back in their place and don't block floors and access routes. Don't leave traps for your workmates. Always report any dangers that you notice and remove them yourself if you can do so safely. Let's make it safe to walk around the workplace together.
That was a very educative safety moment, and it's self-educating. So trust we learn from it. Because personally, I learned something from him just now, so that when moving, don't move with your phones on your hands, operating it, and before you know it, you have slipped off the stair and the rest. So thank you very much for that. At this juncture, permit me to call on the only learned director in Seplat, Mrs. Edith Omuchekwa, Director, Legal and Company Secretary. My learned director, please. May I have the honor of calling you for the keynote address? You know, she's very learned. You know, you guys are educated, though. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mishak. Unfortunately, I don't have any key, so I don't know about this keynote address. Just to generally welcome everybody again. It's great to have you here and interested in this particular very important topic for corporate governance in Seplat. You see the way our shares are moving. It's all about integrity. I was discussing the other day with Chidi Onovo, and we said this company has come a long way, and to build integrity is not something that is easy, but it's something that is worthwhile and rewarding. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes you say, why must it always be us? But when we gradually build this culture, at the end of the day, we build it not only for ourselves, but to leave a legacy for this company. And who knows, tomorrow it might be your children wanting to work in Seplat. So let us take it seriously. As we enter this week, as we listen to the panelists, let us listen and also make it our what I would say, part of us. Let's create it as a buy-in for us. Nobody should teach you what corporate governance is. Nobody should teach you that when you are unsure of what action to take, that you know who to call or where to go to find out, to understand better. I would enjoin us to have an open mind during the session. Let us make it very interactive. Nobody is going to, penalize you if you don't know. But if you don't know and you don't ask and you do something wrong, then there will be a penalty. So let's have an open mind. Integrity is not about punishing anybody. I had once a director here in Seplat. She would say, don't tell them that anybody is going to be punished. Let it come from within. When it comes from within, whether you are there or not, people will do the right thing. So welcome again and enjoy the session. Thank you.
That was a wonderful one from Director, Legal and Company Secretary. Thank you so much, ma'am. The summary of what she just said now to cap it is that we should always do the right thing, even if nobody's watching us. And let us embed the culture of integrity in our daily life. Thank you, ma'am. May I at this juncture call on the Corporate BI Manager, Mr. Charles Nwabulu, for his welcome remarks. Charles Nwabulu, Esquire. Your welcome remarks, sir.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I did have welcome remarks to give, but given that the Director Legal has already welcomed everybody, I doubt if I should say anything at all, given how welcoming the speech has been. But I will just take this opportunity to add a few words of mine on the issue of fraud awareness, which we all know this week is about worldwide. Almost all organizations that are serious about anything relating to integrity, anything relating to corporate governance, good structure, good administration of a company, is observing this week as the Fraud Awareness Week. And we all know that for Seplat, these issues, these principles are of utmost importance. And so in the company, for us, we have adopted the theme of mitigation of fraud, a call for collective action. The importance of that is that it will enable us if we internalize it. And I did take a quotable quote from Madam when she spoke, that it should come from within. If we internalize it, we will realize that nobody will need to chase us and disturb us and essentially harass us into compliance. Compliance will be a part and parcel of our nature. It will be in our character. So part of the events for this week is the reason we are gathered here today. And that is the subject for the panel discussion, which is sandwiched between the welcome address that has been so ably delivered by the Director Legal and the closing remarks that will also be given at the end of this day. The topic of that session is Seplat Zero Tolerance for Fraud and our culture refresh. So during the panel session, of course, I won't speak for the panelists because you agree with me when you hear their names and their CVs that these are very well qualified and expert leaders in the company who have what it takes to dissect the topic. And I don't have the qualification to speak on it. So, but we'll all listen to them and benefit from what they have to share with us. At the end of the day, for us, it's important that a takeaway will be that we'll go with the spirit of compliance, because for us in BI, we have renewed our commitment to the fight against fraud, the war against corruption in all aspects and locations and all corners of this company. More than ever before, our plan is to ensure that whatever is required, we do it to ensure that fraud is eradicated in the coming years. And then in relation to ourselves as well, we know that we have to also maintain a very high standard of discipline, a very high standard of compliance, because you know that the guard cannot lose guard. You also know that the man who keeps the company's conscience must not also be lacking in good conscience. Otherwise, then he has no business being in charge of the company's conscience. So we are keenly aware of this, and we'll be guided by that. This morning, one of my colleagues mentioned to me that even those around us should actually not be found wanting, such as our drivers and other people who work with us. And for me, it's a very strong statement, because what it means is that it's not just us. If somebody can actually get someone that works with you, whether driver or cook or whatever, to admit that he can get to you through him, even if that is not the reality, then there is a problem. So there is a coaching of staff and colleagues to be done, and we are committed to this, I can assure you. I also join in appealing to every one of us to imbibe corporate governance, imbibe anti-corruption, join us in the anti-fraud advocacy, and in the end, the company will be the better for it, and all of us will also be beneficiaries of the wonderful outcomes that will arise from the efforts. Then I want to seize this opportunity also to thank everyone who has been supporting us and giving us all the encouragement to do what we have been doing. We do not take all of that for granted, because without all of that, we will not actually be able to achieve anything. The ruthlessness I referred to, with which we'll be dealing with issues relating to fraud. If you consider what a certain English writer said, William Robertson, that one of the three things that deserve no mercy is fraud, you will understand the reason why we've taken that position. But what I know, and I must admit this morning, is that we cannot do it without the continuing encouragement and support of everyone. Let me round up, because I'm told my time is up, by appreciating everyone who has contributed to this week, the success so far. For me, the fact that it has taken place and will continue tomorrow. Tomorrow we have another session, an awareness session on fraud as well. I will be dealing with the subject of our anti-fraud policy and our speak-up culture. Please, I appeal to everyone to be there as well and come and listen to us, because for us, it's important that we continue to interact and discuss the policies, discuss the subject, discuss the principles, because that is how, in the end, we will all get familiar with this subject and will be on the path of compliance. I appreciate everybody, everyone in the legal directorate who contributed, and all the members of the board and management. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
That was a wonderful one from the BI manager, Charles Nwabulu Esquire. Thank you for welcoming us to this occasion, and thank you for encouraging us to be part of it. The summary of what you just said now is like you said, the BI is the conscience of this organization, and like Caesar's wife, they should be above board. So if you are a gatekeeper, you must be above board and be at alert at the gate at all time. So all BI personnel here, please take note of that wonderful speech from the BI manager. At this juncture, I think it is time for me to hand over to the moderator, from one Charles to another Charles. Is that not tautological? Charles to Charles. So, Mr. Charles, may I, with respect, hand over to you, Charles Ifediba, this time around, to introduce the panelists and take it up from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Meshach. Good morning, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. When you're listening to BI people talk, sometimes they can sound so serious, but our General Counsel made it so easy. If you make it a way of life, you have nothing to fear. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to introduce the panel who will be sitting over here to discuss today. While my other Charles, the fair Charles was talking, the BI manager, he talked about the intelligent people here, but he didn't say that they were all eggheads. Please help me clap, ladies and gentlemen, as I welcome to discuss Seplat's Zero Tolerance to Fraud, a catalyst for Seplat new culture rebrand. First, I'd like to call to be seated. I'll take you by the colors they are sitting. Steve Oji, he's the Director of Corporate Services. A round of applause for you, please. No, you sit over here. Next, I'd like to welcome Ibeada Itoto. She's the Managing Director of Seplat East Onshore Limited. I should have called the lady first. Of course, my very good friend, John Aga, the Deputy General Counsel, Royal. Welcome. Over there. Dr. Olalekan Badmos, General Manager, Asset Development West. That's Western Asset Subsurface. When we're talking of eggheads, I don't want to talk about PhDs. And last but not the least, the very good friend again, the tallest in the room by far, head on a shoulder above others, Chidi Oliver, the General Manager, Internal Audit. All right, now we get the microphone. Charles, yes, Meshach, my name is Charles Ifediba. Just be your guide over here. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to, as the Jesse said, make this very interactive. As they're going to be talking, please take note of the questions they are answering. Should you want to ask other questions, please put them online. There's going to be a session for that will be handled by Meshach later on. Thank you very much. I hope the mics work. gentlemen, I'll start from the person who is farthest away from me, John Aga, Deputy General Counsel. We've been talking about fraud a lot here. Please, what does zero tolerance of fraud mean? And why does Seplat uphold the standard of zero tolerance for fraud?
Thank you, Chas. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Chas, and thank you everyone for finding time to join Business Integrity. Before we even go to zero tolerance for fraud, I think it is important to contextualize what we are talking about, the subject matter, which is fraud itself. What exactly do we mean by fraud? And in contextualizing it, we have to look at organizational fraud, the type of fraud companies across the globe talk about. Fraud is any deceitful act that causes harm to the victim of that act, and the perpetrator seeks to gain from it. And if you want us to pursue that argument far, I will tell you that you may say that it is you did not intend to benefit. At the long run, the ultimate end of a fraudulent behavior is for a benefit. It could be pecuniary, that is monetary or otherwise. Now, when we come to Seplat, for us, fraud here is actually used in a very loose sense. And it is because we recognize our limited jurisdiction that we do not possess the coercive power as have the police, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, and the court to sanction fraud that metamorphoses into crime. So here in Seplat, what we deal with when we look at fraud is a breach of trust. Fundamentally, in other words, it is an unethical behavior. Pardon me, my colleagues in supply chain, let me use that because we know in organization across the globe is not only in Seplat. What you always have, the common issue, the hydra-headed monster, is procurement fraud. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're a procurement analyst in a supply chain, and you are to send bid to potential vendors. And perhaps you have a friend who owns company A, and you want him to succeed in that particular bid. And then writing the email address of john.aga, you put other ones, but you don't want me to participate. You put John Aga, removing that dot. I don't participate. Eventually, your person wins that particular bid. That is fraudulent. Because you're occupying a position of trust and you have violated that particular trust. Therefore, is there any basis for the company to continue to keep you in that position? The answer, if the company comes to the conclusion, no, we can't keep you because you have breached the trust. You have committed fraud within our context. It doesn't mean that you are a criminal. That is the point I'm making. But you have so breached the trust, reposed in you by virtue of your assignment, that the company cannot continue to trust in your ability to act fairly to all concerned. Then why then do we adopt the zero tolerance for fraud? The answer is simple. We want to preserve Seplat. And here again, you must draw a distinction between individual fraud and occupational fraud. Here, we are not fundamentally concerned with individual fraud. That is where you are scammed, 419ers, and you have a, what do you call it, bring your money and it will be doubled. No, we are talking about occupational fraud, the fraud that happens in the course of employment. So we want to preserve Seplat. If the company adopts a liberal attitude to fraud, what you see is that in the long run, the confidence the investors have in the organization may be eroded. The share value, which the Director General, Director Lego mentioned earlier on, if you're following our rise in the share, if fraudulent activities are permitted to thrive in the organization, you won't have that rise as you are noticing. And the moment any fraudulent activity is reported and the management and the board did not deal with it decisively, and the news is out there, you will see the value of the shares going down. And once investors lose confidence in the business, that is the end of it all. And this underscores why we must take all our actions as individuals, wherever we are, very seriously, and see how it impacts on Seplat. And for me, that is actually the hallmark of Seplat first. If I think of my action, how will it affect Seplat? How will it affect my fellow employees? Then I begin to have a rethink and do the right thing. I think, let me leave it here. I'm seeing a signal, which actually is a distraction, telling me that my time is up. So let me leave it here. I hope I have a second bite. Thank you, Charles.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. Thank you very much, John. You mentioned the organization, so I think that's where we should bring it over to our director, corporate services. So, Steve, as an expert in the HR field, how do you intend to embed zero tolerance into fraud, such that it becomes everyone's mantra here in Seplat?
Okay. Next. Because John has actually dealt with it extensively. From HR point of view, maybe fraud is too strong in terms of language. Maybe I can therefore anchor on integrity. And if you look around all the things that we do as an organization, is around ensuring that people who work here operate with the highest level of integrity. I was talking to someone a while ago, and he was having another conflict with another colleague, where the colleague accused him of not having integrity, and he was upset. And he came to HR, and he said, his colleague said he didn't have integrity. And when I inquired, the colleague was right. And I said, what you lack is integrity of communication. You wrote to somebody about something. You did not honor it. It's integrity of communication. And you need to work on it. And so it's not just about money, because you deceived the guy. When you say, you give us a timeline in terms of when a project needs to be delivered, and you don't honor it, it's integrity at stake. Because just like Madam Edith mentioned, that is what our shareholders, the market is watching, and you have deceived everybody. So when you say, what are the things we're doing to encourage zero tolerance, to talk about zero tolerance for fraud or integrity, it's a lot. It starts with our policies. The HR policy is very clear in terms of what the standards of behavior we expect you to carry on in a company. And when you fall short, the consequences are clear. It starts with our values, SIPA. Integrity is there. Because when we expect you to at all times uphold that when people see somebody who works in Seplat, they can look at you and say, hey, this person comes with high level of integrity. So for us, in the long run, we don't just want it to be a mantra. We want it to be a way of life. To the point that we don't have to get to a point where we're having this our Seplat culture. It doesn't. So it's not about what you have done. How have you done it? How have you made the life of another person easier? How have you lived up to the fact that when you are working, you are not deceiving people? Because, so I take one step back. There was a guy in the military, I was watching a documentary, and he said a soldier did something, maybe came late to work, and the soldier was fired. And he was being asked, is it not just the part that the guy came late? He said, no, that's not the point. The point is that when he came late and we asked him why he came late, he lied about it. By lying about it is the reason why he was fired. Because by lying about it, his colleagues cannot trust him that in moments of war, this guy will be there for us. So let's not take it lightly that when people lie, it's okay. So how do we want to uphold that? It's about our policies. It's about rewarding the right behaviors. I was talking to the COO the other day when we were talking about what are the parameters that will form part of giving people special recognition awards. Those are moments to recognize people. Not just what you have done. For people who tell the truth at all times, let's honor them. When you talk about education, I mean, talking with John and others, we share learning from incidents. When people do good things or bad things, from time to time as part of town hall, we share learnings from incidents so that people can learn from it. And of course, I talk about been encouraging it in terms of reward and all that, but more importantly is consequence management. People who do bad can escape today, but they won't go far. And just know that between us, HR and BI and the legal department, we are looking out for you. And so if you are lying or deceiving and committing fraudulent things, know that the company has long distance memory. They will find you. And we will continue to show that zero tolerance for it. Because when we can make example of those people, we will share it from learning from incident, so that those who are thinking about doing it will shy away and run away from it. Because this company doesn't have any space for it. It hurts those individuals, it hurts the company, it hurts our market. And if all of us need to work here, we need to be able to remind our neighbors next door that when they commit fraud or whatever they do hurts integrity, they hurt all of us. And you better be working and be fighting for yourself. Because people who commit fraud, we need to be able to fight for our lives by upholding the right values. That is what our Seplat culture asks for. That's what our values ask for. And that's what our code of conduct expects. Thank you so much.
Wow, wow, wow. Steve, the way you've been talking, I feel like exterminating all cases of fraud, stamp on it. Okay, so that brings me to you, Chidi. From the way he spoke so vociferously, so strongly, do you think that can fraud be completely eliminated? If yes, what are the steps that should be taken to achieve this?
All right, that's a tough one. Good morning, colleagues. Let me start by joining the previous speakers who really re-echoed the importance of what we're doing today. It's highly important, it's critical, because it strikes at the core of what we do and who we are and our survival as a business. So we don't have a choice. We have to take what we're doing here today or this week very seriously. Make sure that we walk away out of it with some sort of personal call for action, what you can start doing very differently regarding fraud and actually corruption. Because for me, the two are almost indistinguishable. Corruption hits on power, abuse of power. Fraud is about deception. But you can combine both and, should I say, commit both at the same time or commit both separately. Now, coming back to the question, which is whether we can exterminate fraud, stamp it out. Unfortunately, the answer is no. But should we strive to achieve it? Absolutely. And that is the policy of Seplat, which is, again, John's statement earlier about zero tolerance, because that's our target. Now, having said that, is it possible that we achieve zero fraud? Yes. Is it practical? Probably not, but we can. Now, what do? We try to stamp it to the barest minimum. That is the practical must-do action. Reduce fraud to the barest minimum. And what are those things we can do to do that? First, the culture, ethical culture. how do we strengthen it? I don't know how many of us have taken time to really internalize our current culture refresh. If you have not, part of the call to action today that you should take, if you don't take anything else, is to spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and try to really kind of pay attention to that our value system when it comes to culture. Seplat first. Inclusivity and respect. Partnership. Collaboration. Agility. No. Confidentiality. Agility. And trust. Spend some time, internalize those. If all our actions are anchored on Seplat first, you would agree with me that we probably will be spending less time here talking about fraud and corruption. Because we are anchoring every decision, all our day-to-day decisions, we are anchoring it on Seplat first. And from where I stand, internal audit perspective, we see a lot of decisions, a lot of actions that tend not to suggest that those who took those decisions or actions were thinking Seplat first. So let's even start there. So that's one challenge I will give to us. Go home, go out of this session today, think about our culture refresh, what it means, and how it translates to our day-to-day action and acts. So that's one. Ethical culture. The second one is internal controls. How strong is our controls? And those who man them. Control is as good as the people who are entrusted to comply to it, to follow it. That's where we come in. The next is technology. How do we as a company use or leverage technology in trying to reduce fraud to the barest minimum? The next is about fraud assessment. Regular fraud assessment. The BI department, internal audit department, the ERM department, and every other assurance provider in the organization. How do you structure what you do to be able to assess the risk of fraud at any given time? Then, of course, what we're doing here today, awareness, training, getting people to get refreshed on what it means when we talk about fraud. And then whistleblower program, highly critical, extremely important. We have 2 whistleblower channels in the organization, internally and externally. How many of us have utilized that? The external one is completely out of the system of Seplat. If you are afraid of anonymity, you can, what you say will go directly to the company, third party that manages that program. So these are all the different things as an organization we are doing and we continue to do to bring fraud to the barest minimum with aspiration of zero. That is exterminating it completely. Going back to Charles' question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so very much. You mentioned 2 critical things. You talked about deception and people trying to make it a way of life. And you also talked about third parties. So I think this is when we can now go to our MD Seplat East Onshore. Ibiada, there's no denying the fact that a lot of people tend to see fraud as a way of life. What measures has the company put in place to ensure that contractors and our third-party vendors, particularly in our asset locations, adhere to Seplat's zero tolerance to fraud?
Thanks very much. Nice question, and thanks for inviting me as well today. When it comes to fraud and the way we interact with our
vendors. Of course, the very beginning is where you start from. Who are these vendors that you're bringing in? So right from the vendor management process, there are clear steps for due diligence of the kind of vendors that you get registered into the company. In the course of their work for you and for other people, there's a continuous monitoring as well on the performance of those companies. We do have, existing history. You will hear once in a while, this vendor or that vendor stops working for us, and is due to perhaps some of these infractions that we see. But even before that, there is an education of the vendor. When we start out at the contracting process, in terms of the documentation that the contractor has to sign and the understanding of that documentation, there is allowance there, clearly stating what are the policies of the company so that they understand what their obligations are, governance-wise, as regards our relationship with them. There are other forums that we have with them as well. You have the vendor management forums. You have other forums where they're even free to, in an open environment, ask questions about some of these gray areas. We're all aware that operating in Nigeria, there are a lot of things vendors think are normal, that they do with, not other companies, and it's taken as, part of doing business in this part of the world. But being the company that we are, we do hold them to higher standards than that. And so there is that extra mile of education we do to bring them to that awareness of the level of governance that we require from them, even contractually. We also inform them of the channels that they have for whistleblowing. And I think Charles will agree with me that they do use those channels every now and then to report certain suspicions that they have. So I think I can say that in terms of the channels we've made available and the use, there are things there in place that we're using, and we are seeing progress and results in that direction.
Thank you very much, Ibiada. All right, so Dr. Badmos, obviously, Western Asset is currently our largest operation in the company, with facilities in so many locations, various locations. So how do you ensure that these facilities are closely monitored to prevent any form of fraud?
Yeah, thank you, Shaz, for the question. Yeah, like you rightly said, Western Asset happens to be the biggest asset today, as of today. And as a company, we have come a very long way when it comes to dealing with fraud. A lot has been said concerning fraud, relating it to integrity, but in this case, I will be relating it to ethical and unethical behavior. In Western Asset, we try as much as possible to adhere strictly to the company's policy on zero tolerance to fraud. Meaning that for every suspected unethical behavior, a detailed investigation has to be carried out. And once unethical behavior is established, then the individual will need to face the panel. So what that means to us is that we don't have any other way of doing business than seeing ethical behavior as a norm in the asset. To reduce fraud, the first thing to do is to, based on what we are doing now, which we have seen many have been done during the course of the year, is for us to continue to sensitize ourselves on what fraud is all about. To continue to educate ourselves on what fraud is all about. And at the same time, letting us to understand the impact this evil could do to the business foundation and our financial system. That is what we have been doing in the asset. Similarly, we do know that based on the current system we are having and which extend to the asset, we have several layers of approval. That is from the requisition to invoicing, which makes it relatively difficult for an individual to conceive fraud and at the same time execute it. So, based on the approval levels, we have a sort of gate which serves as check and balance, meaning that before a particular request leaves a particular table, possibly the contract holder, in this case, coming to the contract owner, the contract owner must have checked what is coming from the contract holder before before getting to the desk of the contract owner. And if there's anything that needs to be clarified or further clarified, you have certain questions before appending your signature and take responsibility on that particular request. And it goes on like that to the contract, to the SCM manager, to the GM SCM. So all these have already been put in place, which I believe that they're efficiently working. Similarly, there's need for us to have, which we are doing, to have adequate quality control check in the system. Regularly auditing the process and the system, and spot checking to know if the procedure put in place are actually working, because we need to understand that you need to continuously spot checking and auditing the system, because you need to be ahead of the game. So that is why it is necessary for us to continuously to be spot checking, auditing the system, and try as much as possible to close the gaps. Whistleblowing is something that is working, it's a good policy, and it's working. And I will request that we should all do more making use of the whistleblowing, because this is another avenue for which we can expose the evil in the system, noting that the evil associated with fraud can completely destroy the foundation of the business. So like they always say, if you see it, you say it. This is what we adopt in the asset. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. All right, just to remind those of us who are here, especially those who are online, that should you have questions, kindly note later we're going to go through all the questions, and as they're here, they will be able to take the answers. All right. While you were talking, I went back to review what all of us had said, and deriving from the MD Seplat's last answer, there's no denying the fact that a lot of people tend to see fraud as a way of life, right? So flowing from that, your last response, are our contractors within the assets aware that they can report suspected frauds by employees? What's the process for these contractors to report such fraud by employees? And how often are they educated on it? Ibiada.
They're aware. At least they use it. Informally as well. They do come, sometimes one-on-one, but in terms of, and then they're also told about the confidentiality and made, comfortable as regards the confidentiality of that channel of communication as well. Personally, in my asset, I'm aware of at least 2 occasions where even I did not know at the time that they had made a complaint. It's only towards the end, after the investigation had been over and all that, that I was now made aware that, okay, even the origin of this issue started out with a vendor, putting in a whistleblowing complaint about a particular contract holder, and then when it was investigated, one or two things were found out. So I think there is a clear track record that communication is working. We'll need to do more, but that communication, it's actually active. And I think I can speak to as recently as last year that we did have them using it on record. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay, Steve, this is for you. We just concluded a cultural refresh on SF impacts. Is there a nexus between fraud and our new culture?
Okay, thank you. So, and a lot of the speakers have actually also made that link. If you think about that, a few ones that come forth, we talk about Seplat first. Seplat first reminds us that whatever we do, let's think about this company. Let's think about the interest of this company. And as you think about the interest of this company, think about your own interest. So if you bring it to yourself, can you steal from yourself? I'm not sure there's anybody who wants to steal from himself or herself. So when you do unethical things, inappropriate things against Seplat, you will actually hurt yourself. So Seplat first is reminding us to treat this company like our own in a way that demonstrates that at all times, interest of Seplat come first in every decision. So that's one strong nexus. The second nexus is on performance. Remember, it's about the SF impact, Seplat first, inclusivity, performance, agility, confidentiality, and trust. So performance is key as well. And if you think about, in my last comment, I was talking about the fact that our performance appraisal, we use that to measure not just what has been done, but how it has been done. And if you just draw an X and Y axis, for example, X and Y axis, this one is performance, this other one is maybe integrity for the sake of it. High performance, high integrity, those are the people we want in this company. High performance, low integrity, no matter how much you perform, and your manager speaks all the English in the room to demonstrate why you should have high performance appraiser, we will not give you. If we have our way, we should actually be exiting you. Because it's not just what you have done, but you have done all the work, but you have killed your colleagues in pursuit of that achievement. That's not what we are looking for. So, SF Impact also speaks about performance driven, but integrity is measured as part of that. The last one for me is trust. To bring that home, and I've also attributed to that in my last response to say, I was watching an event in US where a military guy, and I've shared this with my colleagues in HR, a military guy was being given badge of honor. And he was given an opportunity to talk about how come he earned that badge of honor. And he shared the story of when he had to fight in Afghanistan. So, he's a military pilot, and there were two of them. They dropped off their colleagues to be able to fight on the ground. And himself and another person, another pilot, having another plane, they went up. It was around winter. The weather wasn't great. But because they could connect through radio, he could hear his colleagues on the ground saying, sensing danger. Then he looked and he saw that actually they were in danger. Against the risk of the turbulence of the weather and all that, he came down and shot the enemy. You know, he went up again because he was actually also in danger, trying to surmount all the weather challenges and all that. Eventually he did that. He ran out of ammo. He told his other colleagues that was following him what was happening. That colleague was too scared because of the weather. He said, I will escort you. He escorted the guy, they came down, they did that. When they finished, all the US soldiers were alive. They came, they picked them and all that. And he was asked the question, why did you take all those risks? Why did you do all that? And he responded, he said, because they will do the same for me. That is the reason why they have medals in the military. And that comment said that in the military, where we call ourselves brothers and sisters, they don't call themselves colleagues. They are brothers and sisters. He said, in the military, we sacrifice ourselves for others. But in your normal business world, you sacrifice others for yourself. In appraisal, as we try to build trust, we don't want anybody sacrificing others for himself, because that damages all of us. And that is why that trust is a very important aspect of that our culture. We are not saying sacrifice, but just do something for the sake of others, because that's how we grow. That's how we learn together. That's how you build teams, trust in teams. And that's why others will be there for you. And so when we think about recognizing you, we are thinking about recognizing you because of all the things you have done, not just in service of others, but in service of Seplat. That is the culture. And that is why it's not part of our Seplat people's voice. That every year we are measuring how we are trending. How each of us are trending year on year. And I hope that as we continue to trend it, this year, by the way, we have gone top quartile on that. So you can't go lower than that. So the next year can actually be better. And the invitation is for us to continue to use that and all the other moments that matter when you have your meetings, to be able to remind us of all the best practices you can deploy to help us uphold the culture of Seplat in service of Seplat. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, Steve. I can see other panelists clapping. I don't want to say dear colleagues again, or ladies and gentlemen. I'll say brothers and sisters. All right, the importance of what is being discussed today cannot be overemphasized, because we have in the house, who has patiently been listening to all of it, Mr. Samson Ezugore, our COO, is here listening patiently. A round of applause for him. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time, sir. So now, because of the importance of this, I'm going to ask John Aga a very direct question. What are the consequences of committing fraud to both employees and third parties?
Thank you, Charles. I think Steve has touched on the importance when he said, if we have, if we have our way, we will let you go. So let me start with employee. We know the consequence if fraud is committed, and of course we have in mind the qualification I put to the term fraud, which Steve also zeroed down to absence, want of integrity, and I think Ibiada, Badmos, and Chidi also touched on this or similar part. So if you are found wanton in trust or ethical behavior, and it goes through process and it is established, the very first consequence is you could receive a termination of employment. That is loss of opportunity to earn a living. And I'm sure nobody wants to experience that at this point in the history of the country. And that also means that we should try and do the right thing, even when no one is watching us. The second one is, if for any reason you could also get a warning letter. That is another consequence. You could also get redeployed, even if you are still within the organization. And HR also reserves the right to say, okay, because of this thing you have done, while you are here, you may not get promotion for a certain period of time. And while you're also in the business, if any fraudulent activity is established, they could also tell you, you may lose some percentage of your earning or entitlement. All these are consequences of fraudulent behavior, punishing a fraudulent behavior. Then for a third party, let us start with vendor. It is still also loss of business opportunity for the vendor. We know that zero tolerance for fraud. Yes, it is aspirational. And when we hope we'll get there at some point, but we are enforcing it. The management is very, very intentional about that. Some vendors have been blacklisted. Some vendors have been suspended. And some vendors have also been requested to refund a certain amount of money depending on the outcome of the investigation. So in order not to waste, these are consequences to employees and of course to third parties. I think that is the direct answer you seek, Charles. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. All right, we'll come back to Dr. Badmos. Talking about fraud, there are circumstances that makes them easy to commit. So I'll be asking you, from the Seplat anti-fraud policy, we understand that when an employee has total control of process from start to finish, it is an indicator of fraud. How do you ensure that this is not the case, particularly with contract owners?
Yeah, thank you. I want to believe that at this stage of our life as a company, I'm not too sure we have such a process. And if we do, that process is already flawed and it should not be allowed. Because based on what I know as of today, the process, the SCM process, which is the contract management process, have already mitigated that, in the sense that we have devolution of authorities, devolution of power, approval across the entire contract management team. Like I said earlier, we have the contract holder, we have the contract owner, we have the SCM manager, we have the specialist contract holder or something like that before it gets to the GM SCM. These are different gates of approval. And at each of these gates, a due diligence is being carried out. Before it moves from the contract holder to the contract owner, you have to review what has been done by the contract holder before you take responsibility or accountability by putting your signature. After that, it goes to the SCM manager and on her own like that. So I believe that we already have a system in place taking care of that, which I strongly believe that is efficient enough to curb such acts. Thank you.
I think that's what clapping for, knowing that the organization has a series of gates where we can catch fraud. All right, so Chidi, this is for you. So how can synergy be achieved between business integrity, internal audit, and risk management in the efforts to prevent or mitigate fraud?
Equally a very good question. The three functions you mentioned, business integrity, internal audit, and risk management, they are all, or we are all assurance providers with other assurance providers within the organization. It's important that those three functions collaborate. That is, that they work together. As a matter of fact, we have in Seplat what we call combined assurance framework, where the assurance providers, including these three functions mentioned in the question, meet on regular or periodic basis to discuss matters around governance, assurance, and how to safeguard the business. So at the meeting, we exchange notes, we share and align strategies, and then draw insights and lessons from different subjects. So to the question, it's absolutely critical that the functions charged with protecting the organization, that they collaborate, that they synergize and work together for common good. What we don't want is things falling through the crack because there is no communication, there is no collaboration. that certainly is not good. So that's why it's important. The other bit is leadership support. The three functions cannot do what we do and do it effectively in a collaborative and synergized manner without leadership support. And I can assure every listener here that Seplat leadership is fully in support of these functions. Each of these functions is established with a mandate and a charter that empowers them to carry out certain responsibilities that are clearly defined in the mandate. So that clear definition of responsibilities and mandates helps to make sure that each of the functions understand what they need to do, how they need to do it, and how they need to collaborate with other assurance providers. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'd like to thank you all for staying with us this far. Now, let's just give them the last round. And for this last round, we would like some more conciseness, maybe giving us examples as Steve is used to doing. We'll start with you, Dr. Badmos. A key area susceptible to fraud is supply and procurement, right? Are there internal controls that can spot suspected frauds during procurement of goods and equipment, and how effective are these controls?
Yeah, thank you once again for the question. Like I said earlier, the processes from requisition to invoicing is very, very clear, and there's no ambiguity around it. I won't lay too much emphasis on having multi-layer approval to checkmate fraud. I've talked on that enough. But if I should take Amokwe warehouse as an example, at Amokwe warehouse, you don't issue goods notification receipts without confirming that appropriate quality control has been carried out before receiving the good. And that should be in line with the scope as specified in the contract. And at the same time, another level of check is that the person or the personnel that is going to issue the WCC is definitely not the requester. So with that, we have about 3 layers of approval, which give us enough confidence that we have been able to checkmate fraud. Are we doing well? I say yes. Is the system efficient? I say yes. Can we do more? Yes. As a company, there's need for us to have end-to-end tracing of the item that is being supplied to us. When I say end-to-end tracing, I meant the source of that item, the company, the individual supplying it, how do they do their business, what is the structure of their business. Based on my experience, we need to do more on that as a company. Similarly, when it comes to cost estimation, we still need to do more on our cost estimation. We need to understand the numbers. We should be able to explain the numbers, and the numbers should align with the global trend when it comes to cost estimation. These are the other things we need to do to improve the processes to curtail fraud. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Badmos. All right, the last question for you, Chidi Onovo. What is your advice to employees and other stakeholders of Seplat who avoid whistleblowing because of fear?
Yeah. Yeah, this is also another important question, because if we have this fantastic channel through which we can help ourselves and help the company, and we are not using it, yeah, so there is a problem. The fear part of it is actually, in my opinion, and from where I stand and what I know, the fear is illusionary. It's almost like the fear of flying, but you do know that that's one of the most efficient way to get you to your destination. And immediately you board and the thing is going, you completely forget that you were dreading to climb onto the aircraft. So I want us to begin to see the fear, or different angles of fear that we inject into whistleblowing, to see it from that perspective. A lot of it is illusionary. Now, let me start by saying that it's completely anonymous. You can also disclose your identity if you want. It's a choice. But you have the option to state clearly that you want it anonymous. And of course, you will mention your name. There is the phone part of it. There is the email part of it. I mentioned earlier that there is internal channel that people in BI would be the recipient of it. But there is also external one that is completely out of Seplat that you can also utilize. So you can use a different phone number. You can use someone else's phone number completely on that external one. You can use a different email address. Emails can be created anywhere, anytime. So there are several ways you can utilize our whistleblowing program and protect your identity and maintain your anonymity. And I can assure you that Seplat leadership completely supports protecting anybody who whistleblows. There is no repercussions. There is no something coming back to hurt you because you whistleblew. No, absolutely. Seplat stands behind you. If it's identified, that's, there is repercussions, there is punishment, intimidation. That in itself is also fraud, and is also against the policy. So I think we should take, again, another thing we should take out of this is the complete sanctity of our whistleblowing system. The fear is largely unfounded and illusionary. Take advantage of it. Be rest assured that Seplat stands behind you in protecting your anonymity, in supporting you if by any chance you are going through any kind of hurt or harm as a result of the fact that you whistleblew. So that's the only thing I can add. Again, thank you. I think I will take my leave now to attend to other matters. This is a fantastic session, and I enjoy all of us to make sure we take something out of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chidi. Thank you very much, all. In 3 minutes, we'll all be out of here. So I'm going to be asking the remaining 3 panelists to summarize whatever you want to add in 1 minute, starting from our lady, Ibiada. 1 minute. Your time starts now.
Okay, 1 minute. I'm going to borrow from what Director Legal said. It's all about us, your personal values and your integrity. That plays into, when you're in the whistleblowing space, what are your own values? That is what will drive you to whistleblow, and even perhaps put behind you whatever fear you have. As a contract holder, again, it is that integrity that you have that will drive you to ensure that the process is transparent. I just want to say that as a system, the different levels, they're working fine. If you look at our tender board process, a lot of things have actually been spotted at tender board. It is a very effective gate that we have is multidisciplinary. It's something that we do very well. You have your 4+4+4 process as well for vendor selection. It's another system Seplat brought in to try to randomize things and ensure that the system is fair. So overall, are we there yet? We're not perfect, but are we making progress? Certainly so, looking at where we're coming from. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Steve, your 1 minute.
You say my 1 minute has gone. So in Delta, we say it's very sharp. We say, bros, land, yawa gas, finished. So maybe there's one part I need to touch on that we haven't touched on today. In my previous life, somebody was suspended from duty pending investigation. And usually the way we used to write those letters, we don't have an end date. We just said, we anticipate that this could take 1 month to conclude. It took 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, it kept going. And from time to time, he will have to report to HR to just check the status. And one day, he said to me, Steve, the part that hurts me in all this is that it's a lie. My children have been sent out of school because they can no longer cope because of the stigma against their father. Myself and my family can no longer go to church because I'm a pastor. And I cannot be a pastor. And I said, I have been suspended because I've stolen from this company. But at the end of the day, when the investigation was over and we recalled him, it was never the same again. I remember that it didn't take long when the guy died. Here, I've been in a situation where we have asked people write petitions to BI, for example, and you ask why. And they said, I know it's a petition. I know I don't have anything to prove, but let BI worry about it. Think about what it also does. We encourage people to write petitions. We encourage people to go to whistleblowing. But a part of integrity is also the fact that you are telling the truth. Because it wastes companies' time in investigating and you go around, nothing happens. Our reputation is also at stake. So, but why we encourage you to just blow the whistle, report on ethical practices, but also think about the consequences of when you don't have the facts. What it does to the individual, what it does to their family, and what it also does to this company. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. John, you started. It's only natural that you end it.
I think it is just coincidental ending it. So, to be honest, colleagues, I think Steve has just said what I wanted to say, but let me just add a voice to that. Actually, sorry. My 1 minute has gone. So please, the business encourages whistleblowing. And the board and the management are very intentional in protecting the identity of the whistleblower. And that is why, if you check the anti-fraud policy, I think page 13, it sets out things the management can do if there is a retaliation against a whistleblower. The experts in managing the whistleblowing platform in Seplat also have their own limitations. And their limitation is imposed by international best practice and, of course, the company policies. And that limitation is that they cannot go out there to check the identity of a person who sent a whistleblower, of a whistleblower. But where then do I want to make an appeal? In sending your whistleblower complaint, please be sure of your fact. Be sure of your information. Let it not be because I don't like John Aga. Let me just subject John to that psychological trauma of having to answer BI. Let me just whistleblow and send to BI. After all, nobody finds my identity. And If at the end of the day, imagine, BI is friendly, but when it comes to investigation of fraud, it is not friendly at all. When you are subjected to the trauma of asking you, imagine you remembering what you did in last 3 years, which you had even forgotten. Imagine the trauma of somebody saying that you stole money, meanwhile, you never even had access to that money. So please be sure that there is some element of truth in what you are saying. Don't be driven by malice. Don't be driven by envy. Don't be driven by vindictiveness. Don't also be driven by ambition. I want to take Charles down that I may occupy his position. Those are not the fundamentals of whistleblowing. The fundamentals is to set the company on the right path to fish out fraud, not to victimize, not to witch hunt. Please, that is an appeal I want to make. And think of the loss to the company. Think of how many millions, because some of these things come. You look at it on the face of it, you push it to external person. Think of millions. Then think of, Steve, is it July or April? Think of when bonuses are being paid. This money must be taken out. Imagine if the money was there. It would have added to what we go into our individual pocket. Please, colleagues, I enjoin you, see something, say something. But please, verify at least before you say it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I'd like to say thank you very much. If you may all come stand forward, let's have the photographer here before we move on to the next step. Oh, okay. I was hurrying for time. You handle the next step. All right. No. Come together. Thank you very much. I'd like to call on Meshach to handle the microphone and take the next session. I'm sure there are lots of questions online.
Please, the panelists should also remain because there are questions that may come in. Okay. So far, there is no question from any angle online. But we can take 2 physical questions here, and any other question, because of time management, can be forwarded to BI. Please, there's no question so far online, but we can take any first 2 questions here now because of time management, please. Any question, please? Yeah, please. Please take the microphone.
Thank you very much. So my question is, where do we draw the line? We've been told that before you whistleblow, you should have clear facts. We're also told that if you suspect something, you should say it. So this is your suspicion. So where is the line between what you just suspected? Because when you are suspecting something, you don't yet have clear facts. Now, you are not expected to whistleblow if you don't have clear facts. So help us put a balance and where the lines are so that people don't tend to one extreme that hurts the company. Either keeping quiet entirely because they cannot defend, it's just a suspicion, it's subject to my opinion, I can be proven wrong. So I get, victimized. So, or they start talking blah, 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 without any substance. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that brilliant question. I will hand over the microphone to John Aga to answer that question. But just to let you know before he answers the question is that as at the time you wish to blow, you reasonably believed as at that time that information you are giving were the true state of things as at that time. But let the Deputy General Counsel give justice to it.
Well, that is if I have justice to do to it. Okay, thank you. It is actually a very serious issue, I must admit, what you said. But in terms of our policy, Mishak has told you if you reasonably believe in the truth of what you are saying. But for us as a person, what we guide you is, am I doing this because I want this position? So, because, you know, we have, if you raise allegation against me, depending on the type of allegation, if it is in my office, the very first thing is I may be asked to go on suspension so that that allegation will be investigated. Because if I remain there, I may compromise the evidence that may be available to BI people. If I leave, are you the next person coming to occupy that position? Is that the motive? If you answer this truthfully to your conscience, that is not the motive, but you believe that John Aga has some questions to answer, you are well. Go ahead. But if it is driven by, I don't like his face, he's arrogant, he's proud, who he be self. Let me just say some, after all, I see him with one vendor A in, let's say, VI somewhere, they were drinking. The man, let me just say that he gave him money and you blow it. Are you actually acting in all conscience, truthful to yourself? The answer is no. So the best judge is you, your conscience. We all have, number 6, assess the situation. If it is driven by malice, vindictiveness, ambition, untruthfulness, then don't come. Then where you suspect, the way it is done is you go to the BI manager. It's not a whistleblower, it is conversation. You go to BI manager. I am suspecting this thing, no, I am not sure. But it be like, say, you know, too clear. BI has a mechanism. They will deal with it. And you do that, you are protecting even the reputation of the person you are suspecting. Because at that point, the communication is between you and the BI manager. The person hasn't known anything. BI manager will do a check. And if there is no truth in it, it ends there. You can say, come, my sister. I think Steve says he's my brother and sister now. Say, my sister, come. Thank you, but we have checked. There is nothing in it. It is a different thing, like you go externally to blow the whistle. You set the company. In fact, some may even run to the CEO. Imagine the chain. Some may run to the board. Some may run externally. Then the BI team is panicking. They call panel. They draw investigation framework, commit resources, begin to investigate. At the end of the day, nothing is found. The man or the woman who is the subject of the suspicion is called to question. In fact, he's leaving the company thinking everybody is calling me a thief, a thief, a thief. Incidentally, BI doesn't give a clean bill of record. We don't say after we have found nothing. The only thing is that, you know, say they don't invite you for panel. That is the end of it all. Okay? But to go around and say, oh, John, they said did this thing, he didn't do that. No, BI doesn't go that. But you have killed that man by soiling his reputation. So it's a serious conversation. We keep it up. Thank you.
Okay, the General Counsel.
Yes, sorry, let me just say shortly, because John, you actually hit it on the head. Before you blow a whistle, or make any blowing, there must be a whistle. So if there's nothing to blow and you do that, apart from credibility, you know that there's something called good intention. You know, look at all the whistleblowings that are very popular. The people that blow the whistle are actually inside the particular situation, so they know what is happening. But if somebody comes to you, maybe you are, for instance, in external affairs, and somebody tells you something is happening in legal department, and you blow a whistle without even knowing that, then you are just, so maybe even within our system, we should check I'm sorry, I'm part of this particular process. We should check some of the blow-ins that are happening so that we don't, not only waste our time, but waste people's time. So be very, very, very careful, because after blowing and it's not, something that is true, your credibility would have been affected. The way I used to work, we had this also KPMG before I came to Seplat. There was one person that was always blowing the same whistle. He blew it almost 3-4 times. At the end of the day, nobody was listening to him anymore. And that will even affect our process, because when something now happens, we will think it's the same, so we need to be careful not to be a clog in the integrity process of the company. Thank you.
Thank you, General Counsel. We are grateful for that insight. The truth is that if BI have to investigate every whistleblower, then every staff and employee of Seplat will have investigated more than 10 times. BI have mechanism of checking the processes and the conduct to know whether there's prima facie ground to continue on any whistleblower. Otherwise, discountenanced. There's an online question from an employee. From a fraud triangle perspective, what measures are put in place to counsel staff on how to manage and counter financial and other related pressures? So I think that goes to the HR. How do you manage your employees from the fraud triangle to counter financial and other related pressures? Thank you.
So don't worry. I think the answer should have gone. The mic should have gone to COO, because before I give him the mic, he actually tells me one joke, and it's not a joke. And he mentions somebody's name in his village. They always say that if salary no reach you, overtime no go reach. So our salary is big enough for it to reach you. So if you still have additional pressure, then you need counseling. So please.
And thank you very much for that very nice question. I think I couldn't stop, but just jump to this question, even when the microphone was not directed at me. And again, colleagues, friends, brothers and sisters, All right. And I know the fraud triangle. The fraud triangle is something that I relate with very closely. And the three things at the apexes of the triangle are the things that pull you into fraud. You started talking about pressure. Pressure is one thing, right? And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, that we desire good leadership, but we put our people and ourselves into problems and pressure, under pressure, actually to be bad leaders. And I can tell you, take it back to the church. A lot of us claim we are pastors, and then I don't doubt it. But you, Steve, is the lead of a small church group, maybe the prayer warriors. And somebody who knows that Steve is the director of corporate services in Seplat, and Seplat is doing recruitment, graduate recruitment, goes to him and says to him, Steve, you see my son, my daughter, he has to get employment. Help me now. You are my brother. He puts pressure on you from church angle to do the wrong things. If you yield to that, not a problem now. But the pressure will come. You can take it back to your families. Some of us, our spouses may want to go to Dubai 4 times a year. And you cave into it. Not a problem. The other part of the fraud triangle is opportunities. A lot of us create opportunities to defraud the system. Not a problem. You enter inside the triangle. The last part of the fraud triangle is rationalization. After all, Mr. B has been stealing and nobody has caught him. And then you join them to steal. I can tell you, brothers and sisters, that the thing that happens with this last one, rationalization, is the day you steal and you get away, you say you are smart. You continue to steal, you get away, you say you are smart. The day you are caught, you say it's the work of the devil. There is no devil. You are the one. Again, just call a spade a spade. There is no devil in it. It is you. So I will still end with the same quote. If your salary no do, over time no go reach. Salary, Seplat is a very well-paying employer of labor. The employee value proposition of Seplat, I like the clap. I didn't instigate it. Please clap for Seplat and continue to appreciate Seplat, because again, we've been talking about Seplat first, Seplat first, Seplat first. Seplat first actually means you first, because at the end of the day, when Seplat wins, you win. Believe it or not. And because I may never get the opportunity of coming back to the microphone, let me just then say this. Colleagues, you know, when we say whistle blow, please whistle blow. NDD, please whistle blow, because it's important. We need to stamp out fraud or corruption. Corruption is not in my native language, guys. We learned it, but we've given corruption bad language, bad name, right? Now, see how Seplat first means you. This is November, am I right? December, January, February, March. In the next 4 months, all of you will get your bonus. If you don't whistle blow, if you don't keep your, your environment sane, what will happen in March is that some individuals will enrich themselves, either with vendors or with anything, any means. Your scorecard will be 56%. And that means that the way they calculate your bonus will be pointing down south instead of pointing north. But if all of us run a very clean business with high level of integrity, then what will happen? The scorecard will go up, and the outturn will go up. Your pocket will be fatter in March 2025. So, colleagues, I like the question very much so, but if your job is also not paying you well for you to live a life, then you probably may need to look outside, actually. Because if you think your job is not good, try unemployment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, COO. That was a very brilliant answer to that question. Now, because of time management, I know that the questions keep coming, but we have to manage the time. If you can hear me online, please, we will take note of all your questions. You get response from us, please. But for the final question before we leave, it's also online. In the light of the trauma with individuals wrongly accused of fraud, shouldn't it be an assumption of innocence until proven guilty when fraud is being investigated? That is a very sweet question. That's fine, you know. Thank God the BI manager, Charles Mwambolo, is a lawyer, and myself, the forensic and investigation manager, I am a lawyer. The first thing we uphold is the Nigerian Constitution. Seplat is a corporate citizen and a law-abiding citizen for that matter. So, for everybody accused of any fraud, there is presumption of innocence. We don't assume you are guilty. We investigate with an open mind. So there is no trauma to the extent that you are being labeled as being guilty. That is not Nigerian law. And we cannot go against the Nigerian law. I'm sure I may have answered that question. So, Okay, to answer that question, sending somebody on suspension pending investigation mean the conclusion of a conclusion in the matter. No, it is not a conclusion. If we are listening well, and even those online, if you heard Mr. John Aga, he made mention of it earlier, and even at a point, Dr. Sivoji also made mention of it. It is when you are occupying certain position and there's a whistleblower against you, there's no presumption of guilt against you. But there's still that presumption of innocence. But you might be in a position to compromise investigation. There's a case BI have been doing for some time now. We'll pull the person out of that place because your continuous being in that place, your subordinates may not speak. And the investigation may be compromised. Therefore, it is not conclusion on the matter, but to create a space so that others can speak up. Let me give to the Deputy General Counsel.
Okay, and again, here, when you are on suspension, in order to still keep within the terms of the Constitution and our policy, if you're on suspension pending investigation, you're actually on your full pay. The only thing is that leave that space. We don't want you with it. Let us have time to look at this whole exercise and see if there is truth in it. But continue to receive your salary. At the end of the day, if there is nothing, if nothing is found, you come back and resume. Redeploying the person is a big organization, but a small one. The person, if you are within, you may compromise the investigation. At times also, there is also what we call protective suspension. When we have to suspend you because we need to protect you as a person. Incidentally, you wouldn't know all these things. But these are professionals that handle this. And the management look at all the circumstances and see the justification. But it does not mean in any way that a conclusion of guilt has been drawn. Thank you.
Thank you, John Aga, for only one question. So if you are someone like a classmate to John Aga now, and there's only one question for the exam, you feel that you can answer the question in 3 lines, and you see John Aga asking the supervisor, more paper, please. You will ask yourself, is for this question? So without taking much of our time, I want to thank everybody for creating time to be here. And may I, with respect, call on the COO for his closing remarks, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mishak. I never thought I was going to get another opportunity to say one more. So at this point, I would really like to thank every one of you for really staying through the course. This is one topic that is very close to my heart as an individual. And I like what we have done today. I hope by the time you reflect fully on what we've done today, we will all have one collective resolve. When I was accosted a few days ago at the landing of the staircase to come and sign onto a commitment, it came to me naturally. I stopped and I wrote in a very blood ink that I commit to doing the right things when no one is watching. And I hope that we can all, at the end of this week, have a common resolve and a common commitment. Different versions of doing the right things when no one is watching. So this, for me, is a call for you to review your commitment that you already made. I will not go back, but just permit me a few minutes just to drive home the importance of all this. We've all said things that happened to Seplat first, Seplat first, Seplat first, which is where this is our farm, colleagues. And that underscores the importance of this as well to our livelihood. One of the things that probably we said less today is that depending on the magnitude of the fraud committed by any one of us, Seplat as an organization can also suffer litigations globally because we are listed in both London and Nigerian Stock Exchange market. We can actually be suspended even from the market where we are listed. So the implications are far. But now take it back home to yourself, first of all, and draw a thread for me and work with me. First, start with leadership. Every one of us in this room here and in the virtual rooms, we are all leaders. And I also thank God that we have the young ones among us. So if you are a leader, I'm sure you want to be trusted. Take the first word, trust. You are trusted, and that is why people follow you as a leader. You're giving them reason to follow you, so they trust you. So why do they trust you? They trust you because you have integrity. And how do you measure integrity? Is how close the things you say and the things you do are. If you say one thing and you do another thing, nobody will trust you. So you don't have integrity. And nobody will trust you. Then, integrity gave birth to the subject of today, fraud. If you are a fraudulent person, you lack integrity. And then no one will trust you. And then that means you have no leadership. If you are a leader and you lack any of these things, ladies and gentlemen, you are none. Because when you look back, nobody will willingly follow you. You are just taking a walk. If you then assume you are a leader, then you are leading from the back, because the people you are leading are in front of you and you have a whip. You only beat them to shape and size, and then they keep moving. But the test and the true test of leadership will be the day that Seplat will just assemble all of us at the muster point out there. And they will blindfold all of us who claim to be leaders, but we're actually managers. And they will then ask the rest 500 plus people, go and queue behind the person that you want to lead you in 2025. Brothers and sisters, when they take out the blindfold, you may find out that some of us may not have one person standing behind us. True test of leadership. We may never get there, but I can then ask you that question of conscience. Where are you and who are you? What do you stand for? What do you want to be remembered for? What legacy do you want to leave behind? And my final note is that context drives behaviors. Context. I was taught ethical lifestyle by my parents, not by any organization. And then, so that you can also see where and how, why I behave the way I behave. There's a context. And why I leave you with the last word about context driving behaviors is what you do with the generation behind you, with your own children, how you bring them up, is up to you. Spare the child. Right. My growing up as an infant, in primary school, kindergarten school. There was no kindergarten school, by the way, so it was primary school. My mother would storm my bag when I come back from school. And if she found a pencil that she didn't buy for me, she would ask me, Chibog, and I answer, come, who gave you this pencil? And I say, it's Badmus. He said, really? Allah gave you this pencil? He said, yes. Her hand would come on my ear, and she would drag me to Allah's house. And he said, Allah, did you give my son this pencil? God on my side, Allah will say yes. You say, thank you very much. Please, your parents bought this pencil for you. Keep it. Don't give it to my child. But thank you very much for your generosity. The hand will come back on my ear, and she will take me home and give me level 1 beating. Level 1 beating was an offense because my pencil either got lost or I finished, and I didn't come home so that they can buy me another one. I'll get level 1 beating. But if the Spirit of God Almighty was not with me that day, and Allah, out of fear, even if Allah gave me the pencil, out of fear, I said, He didn't give me the pencil. My goodness. Now, the hand will return on my ear, and she will pull me up and take me home and give me the beating of my life. And the message is, when did I give birth to a thief? I'm a thief. So that was my upbringing, ladies and gentlemen. So when they asked me today, by virtue of the work I do, on the scale of corruption, 1 to 10, 10 is you are pure and clean, you are not corrupt. 1 is you are very corrupt. Ask me where I will keep myself, even with my context and my behavior. I still keep myself on the low end of corruption because I sign all the things you all do. If the other brings something to me, I will then trust, and I sign it. Badmus will bring, I trust, I sign it. Everybody brings, I trust, I sign it. How can I get to the bottom of it? So I don't have any trust that I am not corrupt because I represent all of you, 500 people in Seplat. So I can actually be going on into jail on your behalf, ladies and gentlemen. And that is why when Chidonovo talked about the processes, when John talked about the BI, internal audit, all of them being put in place, you can then see why it is important that for me, representing all of you, who had put myself on a scale of 3 instead of a scale of 10, because your behavior is it ends up on my table. So I cannot. So because I don't know, I say, well, on the scale of 1 to 10, I'm maybe somewhere around 3. But the processes that we have actually will push us towards 10. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very long closing remark. But I thought, because the issue of fraud, integrity, ethics and compliance is something that is very close to my heart, I took the opportunity to bore you a little bit, to hold you back, to leave you with some key messages, and then also paint a context to you why I behave the way I do, and leave you with the final charge. What you do to create the context for yourself and your families and your children is very important. But on the final note, let us be committed to doing the right things when no one is watching. Thank you very much.
Thank you, COO. For closing remark. Thank you, COO, again, for the wonderful closing remark. And was even an actual lecture itself. We learned so much from it. In those days when we were in school, and say, what are the agents of socialization? The parents are the primary agent of socialization. And that is the foundation he just gave now. That most of the behavior we put up today, we actually learned it from our parents. And that depends on us, how we want our children to grow after us. Thank you so much again, COO. Now, at this juncture, I think the panelists should step out to take group photograph with the COO and Director Legal. The program continues tomorrow with a workshop on anti-fraud. We'll get the mail later today. Thank you so much for being in attendance. There's light refreshment. Ngozi will be in charge of that as our colleagues are stepping out, please. Moderator Ifediba. Is moderator your first name? Moderator Charles Ifediba. Is it based on height? So, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, this signifies the end of today's program. Thank you so much for being in attendance. Enjoy the rest of your day.